This guy was supposed to stay in a tutorial world for only 3 months or after reaching level 10. However, a mistake had happened. As a result, the system started to bug and he was trapped inside. I won't say skill or abilities in this intro, so before I spoil the fun, let's start the story. Everyone was shocked that the Swift Whale group had been the only party to defeat the hardest boss with just 6 people, and it had been the fastest takedown of that boss in history. A huge crowd had gathered, and reporters were asking the group to explain how they had accomplished it. The protagonist, though part of the group, had been swept back by the crowd because of his large build, while the leader was about to mention Tenma, who had kept testing different tactics during the fight. When they realized Tenma was missing, they searched for him and found him bringing elixirs, which everyone then drank. It was actually all part of a game being played by a boy named Tenma in his messy room, alongside many players from different places. Tenma, meanwhile, was unemployed and searching for work. When he spoke with Nishi, Nishi admitted he was working a shady part-time job, but eventually joined a trading company as a new employee, all thanks to Tenma. Tenma felt deeply sad because the game and real life were completely different. Just as he was about to have a drink, an earthquake struck, causing him to collapse to the floor, unable to get back up. After some time, he woke up in a strange place that felt like a hospital, though it clearly wasn't one. He noticed a girl working nearby and pinched his own cheeks to check if it was a dream. When she saw him awake, she told him that his name was Yamada and that he had suddenly died while playing the game. She even offered him some water, wondering why he wasn't surprised. She explained that there was now a request for him to be reincarnated into the game. Yamada, however, remained unusually calm. Even as the lady continued to explain everything, he showed no shock at all, which actually frightened her. He simply wondered aloud whether he could obtain skills, and even suggested abilities like appraisal or an item box. His casual reactions left her stunned. Since their time was running short, she hurried through the process, while Yamada, noticing her struggle, quietly observed. After evaluating his abilities, he realized that he would not receive any bonuses or penalties. Though he wanted to think about it carefully, the lady was in such a rush that he decided to go ahead with no modifiers, reasoning that it would be easier to experiment with a normal setting. The lady concluded the preparation by explaining that his training would end once he reached level 10, or after 3 months had passed. He asked about perception, but she began his reincarnation, summoning him into a strange house. There, he was greeted by a spring. Looking at his body, he felt light and discovered that he had been reincarnated as a much younger version of himself. The house included a workshop, a library, and even a bedroom, and he understood it was the tutorial house. Afterward, he began planning, recording details for his research, and exploring the training map, which contained dungeons around his house. He learned how to prepare food properly, which allowed him to eat well, and he even earned money to buy meals from the convenient monetary springs. Realizing the advantage, he decided to stockpile food, only to discover that all the supplies were limited to a single day's worth. He was also given a high-grade potion, which reminded him of the game. Later, he discovered item box appraisal as a bonus skill and immediately decided to test it. The lady was summoned by her boss, and she grew anxious, afraid she might have caused trouble. The man in charge, however, reassured others that she was kind, though he pointed out that, of the last 3 respondents, all had abandoned their roles. The gods had been flooding them with complaints, which only made the lady more nervous. She worried she might be fired, but the man explained that someone had to take responsibility, and it would be unfair for her to bear the blame since she hadn't known. It was then discovered that the training facility's time setting had shifted from 1 hour to 1 year, and all the potions allocated for him had been stored accordingly. He had even kept some food in the storeroom, though unfortunately it all vanished once the training ended. When he finally entered the indoor training ground, he wondered where he should begin. Checking his stats, he decided to prioritize leveling up if MP increases by a fixed value per level. If it's by ratio, he will raise stats before leveling. He then focused and tried using the time skill, only to notice that 5 MP had been consumed. Curious, he continued experimenting, casting water, fire blow, and even excavation. After a while, he felt dizzy, and with only 10 MP left, he sat down, too weak to stand. Still, he managed to produce light magic, gradually beginning to understand the flow of things. In the end, he used sleep magic, drained his MP to 0, and collapsed into rest. After some time, he woke up to find that nothing had changed. He realized he had slept for about 30 minutes, and that he would be fully recovered in just 20 more. Stepping outside, he discovered a sea nearby, and after setting up a table near his house, he sat down to eat while wondering if it wouldn't be so bad to stay there. Soon, however, he regained his confidence and decided to return to training. When he reached his rest point, he noticed that, with just 1 round of effort, it felt easier than before. He also found that his MP had increased, which he considered a success. Exhausted, he lay down again, determined to push himself hard over the next 3 months. He had no idea that he was already trapped within the tutorial, yet his motivation remained high. Meanwhile, the lady who had transferred him there entered a room where the man was waiting, and he told her that he wanted to speak with her about something. Anna had a drink to relax her mind, but it was so brutal that she became even more worried. Hagen, the section chief, took the responsibility upon himself and, as if fearing he might might do something worse to her, signaled her to come and gave her something to eat. She asked what he meant by responsibility, and he explained that the true nature of responsibility was the shadow of power. He then gave her a lecture, during which she said she was almost grilled about why she hadn't taken action. Hagen pointed out that the seniors kept repeating the same story, and asked whether Anna had the authority to change the schedule, rearrange things, or conduct an additional aptitude test, but she denied it to both of them. He added that the previous chief had asked her not to create more work by telling everything, and that it was only common sense that responsibility could not exist without authority, though many people tried to twist that conventionally. He said he wanted her to do her best, and that it was his job to check on her since he was the chief. She replied that if something like that happened again, she would think about the best way to respond. As they both looked out of the giant window, Hagen revealed that someone more capable than the others was around. He added that they should conduct an inquiry to make the higher-ups realize a new system was necessary, and he would handle that part himself. He then asked for an update on the current reincarnation, and she showed him the papers, mentioning that enough time had passed and the tutorial should be over. Since no alert had sounded, she assumed that the person was surviving in the reincarnated world and would automatically be reincarnated again after 3 hours, as that period was equivalent to 3 months in the training faculty. Hagen mentioned that he had been given the interview record with that person, and was surprised to see everything written there. The one called Zipped Yamada was reading a book that was already wearing out, and at the same time he had food, which he needed to consume using the food allowance of plankton. His training would end once he reached level 10, after which he wouldn't be able to try out the things he wanted. For that reason, he was currently prioritizing improving his stats, skills, and level. He received 3,000 yen daily as a food allowance, which he always spent because it didn't carry over to the next day, and since the menu remained the same, he experimented with different foods. If he needed to stock up anything, he could store it in his item box. Eventually, he felt so sleepy that he fell asleep there. When he woke up, he was shocked because he had forgotten to put his notebook into the item box, and realized that the daily reset was draining for him. Hagen told Anna that he had looked into Yamada's recent reincarnation procedure and found him to be a very capable young man, noting that Yamada asked precise questions in a short amount of time. He also admitted that he was considering making Yamada his subordinate. The current reincarnation training system seemed safe, but he pointed out that it had a serious flaw. No sane person could survive more than 3 months completely alone. Anna agreed, adding that the training was designed to end within 3 months, but even then, it was extremely difficult to endure. Hagen looked at his watch and mentioned it was almost time to leave. He reassured her that everything would be fine. On the 29th day, Yamada woke up with a scream, calling out to someone he referred to as Gale, and realized it was once again the same day repeating. He went for his regular exercise, came across flowers and birds, and greeted them cheerfully. After that, he practiced throwing stones, this time managing with both hands. He then began meditating to gather mana before lying down to rest. His days passed in solitude, and he noticed that the rocks were always in the same place and of the same size each day. At night, he even drew figures using light. He managed all his chores with magic and felt fortunate to have so many opportunities to experiment. On the 30th day, he woke up and spent it in the same repetitive way. In the meeting, Anna finished presenting the improvements she wanted to see. A man commented that she had laid out key issues clearly and that it was a good report, but she somehow twisted it to make it seem as if she was the one causing all the trouble. Hagen responded by pointing out that none of them had realized the potential for such problems until they read her reports, adding that management would not be careless and that the man must have misheard. Anna felt uneasy, thinking about how much they enjoyed meetings, while she herself was worried about Yamada and starving for food. 2 months of Yamada's training had passed, and on the 90th day he noted that the time for reincarnation was drawing near. He continued enjoying his meals, believing that his skills were leveling up, and he was now even receiving more food. As the final 24 hours approached, he grew excited, but he was left in the same training world, which confused him and made him wonder what was happening. On the 91st day, he carried on with his usual routines, but felt exhausted from the solitude and frustrated about why he still hadn't been reincarnated. He remembered that the conditions were either completing 3 months or exceeding level 10, and he began to suspect that both might be necessary. Determined, he resolved to give his all in magic training. 6 months passed, yet there was still no sign of reincarnation. He continued with his chores until he noticed that the dolphin on the screen had grown larger. The dolphin confirmed his suspicion, telling him that the system had not been designed to extend beyond 90 days. Yamada was utterly shocked by this revelation. He began asking Gale many questions about why the reincarnation had not yet been completed, but Gale told him to ask one question at a time and revealed revealed that the reason was still unknown. Gale himself was sealed there, and many of the system's functions were not working properly. Yamada noticed that the wall was becoming completely flat and wondered if it was a bug in the training system. Gale agreed, saying that since the training period had already passed, such things were bound to happen. Yamada then thought about Gale, who had returned to the bedroom, and wondered what he should do next. Gale suggested that he make use of the system, which reset daily. Yamada then practiced mana manipulation with a sword, struck the wall with that power, and managed to break through into another room. He found several bugs there, but the room itself still appeared normal. Even so, he remained concerned that more bugs might appear later. He worried deeply and considered moving the supplies as well. The scene shifted to Anna, who reflected that she had not been in the office the previous day because of a work meeting. She then discovered the damage in the training facility and was shocked that the reincarnation had not yet occurred. Unsure of what to do, she called Hagen, who explained everything to her. He appreciated her frankness and admitted that things would have been worse if he had forcibly reincarnated Yamada and hidden the issue. He said Yamada should be brought back quickly with an apology, as it was now the top priority, and he would also discuss the matter with management along with the accident report. He expressed his concern, pointing out that Yamada had already been living in the training space for 15 years alone, and he feared for Yamada's mental state. On the 187th day, Yamada prepared himself, thinking that nothing had changed and feeling completely confused. He had been planning to work hard until all of his skills reached their maximum level, but decided that from the next day onward he would prioritize raising his overall level. He believed that once the trial ended, Gale would also be released. He admitted that he had exhausted his mind over the situation, but now felt as if his eyes had been opened. He even tried to duplicate that space for Gale. Time continued to pass in the same way, and 12 years had gone by since then. Yamada no longer recognized the room, and wondered if it was another bug. The thought frightened him, as he had placed many of his most important belongings there. He considered himself fortunate that the egg had not fallen into that space while he had been lying down. The dolphin wondered if Yamada was misunderstanding the situation, since the goddess of that world had created that place for a different purpose. It was possible that she had even attached hidden conditions to the reincarnations. Giving it some thought, Yamada told himself that no matter how much time it took, they would eventually achieve it. He then began exploring the dungeon to defeat the monsters. 3 years after starting the quest, he finally reached the last boss on the lowest level of the dungeon. Exhausted, he looked upon the dragon, which astonished him by speaking directly to him. Yamada wondered if the dragon was weaker than it appeared, and decided to use his last elixir. Suddenly, he threw a ball toward the dragon. As it became distracted searching for the ball, Yamada seized the moment and struck the dragon's head with his sword, finally defeating it. Afterward, he discovered a child nearby who had cat-like ears and a tail. It was found that the girl's leg had been injured by an old trap that was completely rusted and falling apart. He had first removed the trap and then said they needed to clean the wound with water. He noticed how thin her legs were and wasn't sure how much water pressure to use. After applying an elixir, she woke up a while later, looked around, and called Yamada Big Brother. Yamada was deeply shocked to hear that and asked her about herself. She replied that she didn't know her name or where her home was. Yamada thought that he hadn't spoken to anyone in such a long time, which was why he hesitated, and he wondered what he should do in that moment. He looked at her dress and sandals, realizing that she was from a small village and that her parents had probably taught her never to reveal its location to strangers. He found it impressive that she was managing the situation without showing fear of him. Even so, he thought of leaving, feeling completely at a loss. However, he went back to her, saying he had urgent work, wished her to take care of herself, and left. He sat on a tall tree, thinking about how his spatial awareness skill had reached level 3, where he had unlocked map tracking. While in the field, he wondered if she had any family or friends, and wished for her to return home safely. He then noticed someone arriving to take the girl away. At that moment, he felt as though this was the real world, and not just a game. He reflected on how he always ruined his first impressions in every life, and guessed that even in another world, first impressions still meant everything. He kept exploring further, thinking there were plenty of trades available for him, and that the area would serve as the perfect challenge level. He thought that if he stayed connected for 3 months, he would gain significant progress. Suddenly, he hid himself when he noticed a few people walking toward a village surrounded by a border. They were talking among themselves, and from their behavior, he understood that they were courteous toward strangers. He felt that if that was the case, he could establish a better personal connection with them. After that, he built a treehouse, carried on with his daily routines, and started planning new things, even carving a face on a nearby stone. One day, while watching over the village, he noticed a girl sneaking out to train. The village had only one gate, guarded by 4 people, and the strongest among them was the young wolf beast Kin. A man addressed the strongest one as Langa and asked whether he was still dreaming of becoming an adventurer, warning that if anything happened, he would report everything to his father. By then, Yamada had already gathered information that the village had around 120 people, most of them young, working with pride. They cultivated their own food and occasionally received supplies from traveling merchants. Their water came from a well that had to be dug deep to reach. The chief was an old human who was completely full of himself. Yamada then looked at the girl with the sword, who had tried to sneak out. He saw her swing her sword for a short while before heading back. He felt that if qualities like affection levels and social skills truly had numeric values, he could steadily grind them up. The scene shifted to Anna, who appeared exhausted. Hagen arrived, bringing her milk without sugar, and after drinking it, she began talking about the secretary working under the executive. Hagen suddenly grew furious, but after drinking the milk to calm himself, he said he had made a few moves the previous night and that person would soon have to take responsibility. He then wondered what she had heard. She replied that there were no complaints. She had come from Yamada's reincarnation zone, and then Anna mentioned that she was worried about Yamada's staff and skills, which seemed too overpowered for that area. However, she noted that Yamada was very courteous, and if anything, she was more concerned about him being like that. The scene then shifted to Yamada, who had already seized control and was now preparing to make his move as he approached the village, with only 500 meters left. He wondered how they would react to him, and he resolved that even if he failed each time, he would take notes, watch carefully, compare, and repeat. He admitted to himself that he was truly uncertain about what the outcome would be. Gale told Yamada that there was both good and bad news. Yamada asked for the bad news first, and Gale revealed that he could only materialize inside the room and was unable to leave, which meant he couldn't accompany Yamada on his journey. Yamada showed no visible reaction, which made Gale wonder if Yamada was simply disappointed. Yamada then said he would just create a space for the two of them inside the room. Hearing that, Gale felt genuinely happy to have met him. Gale wrote that in his past life, nothing had ever gone well, and he believed that the whole generation had been disappointed, thinking reality was nothing more than a trash game. That was why, during reincarnation, they hadn't expected anything at all. He reflected that the woman who had met him wasn't present in every reincarnation yet, but it had been misfortune to run into someone like her. Now he and Yamada would no longer be able to speak as freely as before. Gale's functions were also restricted, and he suspected that Anna might have been their benefactor all along. He recalled that 15 years had passed there, though it wasn't a long time, and Yamada had been trapped forever in that train. When Yamada's reincarnation began, Gale hadn't believed it at first. It had taken an entire month for him to even notice the room after the reincarnation. Yamada remembered how he had struggled, how he had met a girl whom he helped, and how he eventually discovered a village. Yamada then asked about the good news, and suddenly Gale stepped out of the bathtub, telling him it would be faster if he saw it for himself. They both entered the room, and Yamada found that objects from his furniture, along with various statues, had been preserved. He clung to the last hope that everything would reset with reincarnation. Gale then mentioned that this was the good news. Yamada quickly rushed to storage, where he discovered the supplies he had been slowly accumulating to fix bugs. Among them, he even found elixir. He announced that he was going out. Gale, however, didn't know Yamada's plan, so Yamada explained that a child from the house who had once helped them was suffering from a high fever and needed saving. Gale opposed the idea, warning that such an action could cause problems in the village. He explained that people would grow suspicious because Yamada's origins were unknown. Gale stressed that once others learned he possessed elixir and immense power, greedy people would surely come in droves, stopping at nothing to claim those resources. He warned that Yamada's good intentions could easily backfire. The scene then returned to Anna, who was waiting at the station, thinking about how much effort Yamada had poured into the tutorial space. His level was already far beyond what had been expected in the reincarnation plan, and she worried deeply about him. Finally, the scene shifted to the village, where the small girl May opened her eyes. Misha, overjoyed, burst into tears. May looked at her in confusion, wondering why she was crying. Misha became emotional and said that May had been conscious because of a fever, but someone who had come with Langa saved her by giving a special medicine. Yamada felt happy that they had managed to do it. While he was with Gale, Gale imagined what it would be like if Yamada met a 12-year-old girl for the first time and she suddenly pulled out a super expensive wheelchair. Gale explained that such a situation would surely cause chaos. Yamada understood everything he said, and Gale wondered if Yamada wanted it that way. Then he himself would also do exactly as Yamada said. Yamada wondered what he should do next, and Gale asked him to simply make a lot of scratches on the bottle. The scene returned to the present, where Sasha asked Yamada why he had given something like that to two strangers, and even questioned who he was. He hesitated, and then Langa introduced her as his wife, Sasha. Langa also introduced his daughter May and his sister-in-law, Misha. Yamada looked at May and thought she really resembled Sasha's daughter. Langa then asked what kind of elixir Yamada Yamada had. Yamada replied that it had been passed down through generations and that his grandfather had given it to him when he set out on his journey. He added that his grandfather had always helped people in need. They were convinced by that explanation and understood why it looked so old. It was indeed very precious to Yamada's family. Sasha addressed Yamada as Lord, held his hand, and thanked him deeply for the elixir. Suddenly, Langa hugged him and called him a savior. Sasha told him not to hug so tightly, since it might hurt Yamada. Yamada freed himself and looked at the four of them with a happy expression. Later, Yamada was given a place to sleep, though a few monsters were in the barn. In the morning, Mei came to him looking stable. Yamada, feeling confused, wondered where Langa was. Mei led him to the well, where everyone greeted both Yamada and Mei warmly. People were overjoyed for Mei. Yamada saw that Langa was pulling water from the well and handing it to others. He realized that the water source was very deep. Yamada said he would relieve Langa, but Langa replied that it was too heavy and that Sasha would be upset if he let her savior do such work. Yamada insisted that it was fine because he owed the entire village as well. The people became excited at having water and asked if they could also try doing it once. Yamada was really getting along well with them all. As he sat with everyone for the meal, Mei suddenly realized that Yamada was the one who had helped her in the forest. Langa was startled and grew emotional again. Sasha then asked if Yamada had been in the forest for more than a month. Langa glared at him, and afterward, they all started eating together. When Yamada returned home, he immediately asked about the girl and felt glad that she was fine. He wondered if Yamada was going to give the turkey to his wife again. Yamada replied that it was not possible right away, since he had heard that people had given away a turkey as a thank you gift. The village chief, along with his son and others, complained that it was unfair. To let everyone share equally, Gale thought they should have already learned their lesson by now, and believed they should hunt for themselves instead. He recalled that, according to Langa, the number of monsters had suddenly increased lately, making hunting far more dangerous. Turkeys, in particular, were clever and had sharp eyesight, fleeing quickly whenever they spotted an arrow. Yamada could catch many using his throwing skills, but he did not want people like the village chief's family to discover his abilities or the supplies he had gathered. For that reason, he kept everything hidden. Gale appreciated Yamada's cautious approach and admitted that the increase in monsters might mean the ecosystem's balance was shifting. He wondered how long Yamada would remain in the village, perhaps until the traveling merchant arrived. Yamada felt there were still things he could do for Lang and the village, since he wanted to repay their kindness before leaving. Gale understood but advised him not to get too deeply involved. Yamada agreed to be careful, yet he still felt there was an emotional wall between himself and Misha. At the very least, he wished to grow closer to her before his departure. After finishing his chores, he even created a waterfall for Gale, who felt deeply grateful. Yamada also crafted a small statue resembling Gale, which moved him to tears, and he called Yamada the best. Meanwhile, in the village, the chief shouted at Misha, claiming that Yamada was absolute trash. He argued that ever since Yamada appeared, the number of monsters had increased, and even the traveling merchant had not come, despite being overdue by a month. He accused Yamada of acting like a brat, hunting 2 difficult turkeys, and possessing an item box. He demanded that Misha help him find Yamada's weakness, promising to help her achieve her dream in return. Misha refused, saying that Yamada was mysterious, his behavior suspicious, yet he was also the one who had saved Mei. She insisted the chief was wrong and that her dream was something she would accomplish with her own strength. She asked him not to misunderstand her. The village chief left, declaring that she would regret her decision. At that time, Yamada was playing with the children. When he noticed Misha sitting sadly all by herself, he understood that he had to do something to fix it. The scene shifted to Hagen, who was speaking with a man. The man revealed that he was struggling with the tight locks in the cells, which were especially difficult to manage, particularly in connection with the polytheistic, family-based gods. Hagen added that during his own time in the cells, he had also gone through many hardships. As their conversation continued, Anna listened quietly. When the man left, Hagen asked her if she had heard how things were going and wondered about Yamada. Anna explained that, according to the customer support team, no complaints had been filed so far. She further mentioned that the internet gaming speed was extremely fast, so causing trouble in the new world wasn't unusual, but Yamada seemed to be doing fine. She reminded him that Yamada had made his own decisions in the past, ones that were cautious yet reliable, so perhaps Hagen was simply overthinking. Hagen admitted he was only worried about what kind of troublemakers Yamada might attract. He reflected on the kind of people Yamada was dealing with, and concluded that they were the unfortunate kind, whose jealousy easily turned into resentment. He explained that such people couldn't handle their emotions, so they simply began to hate and resent others. She was deeply confused to hear all those things, realizing that Yamada's continuous talent and potential were far beyond what others could ever reach. She thought Yamada was inevitably bound to meet enemies of that kind of people. His presence even reminded her of her grade school days, making her think that even if Yamada had no such intention, someone like that would still approach him eventually. She wondered if it meant Yamada would be trapped no matter what he did. Hagen agreed, saying that Yamada's modest personality only made things worse. He added that Yamada needed someone by his side who was willing to get their hands dirty. Anna responded that a person like that would completely clash with Yamada's Yamada's personality. The scene then shifted to a village where Ujironi's father called him to discuss a deal, mentioning that Yamada had embarrassed him over the matter of the guinea fowl. He found it suspicious that Yamada worked so hard even when it brought him no benefit, especially since his background remained unclear. Moreover, Yamada was hoarding all the guinea fowl, and if the villagers began favoring him, their family might be in danger and could even lose their position. They discussed how many things had begun to change after Yamada's arrival. At that moment, a man named Zlatan arrived carrying firewood, and Ujironi suddenly came up with an idea. When he shared it with his father, the latter was shocked, but Ujironi asked him to just leave it to him. Once Yamada was walking, he noticed Langa chasing after him. When he called out to Langa to come forward, Langa approached and suddenly begged Yamada to train him as well. They sat down, and Langa explained that no one had asked him to do this. He had simply seen how much Yamada had contributed to the village and wanted to become stronger for everyone too. For that reason, he asked Yamada for help. Yamada, feeling confused, told Langa that he understood his intentions but would not give an answer immediately. Langa, insisting he was serious, begged again and reminded Yamada of all the work he had done for the village. He admitted that whenever he looked at Yamada, he felt that Yamada was more mature than himself, despite being young and humble. Yamada was genuinely shocked by this and credited his grandfather for his character. Langa then wondered about Yamada's grandfather's name, betting that it must be a cool one. Yamada hesitated before saying it was Gale. He explained everything to Gale as well, which left Gale shocked. The two of them then sat down to discuss the situation with the village chief and Langa. Gale remarked that there was no way to resolve it quietly or cleanly anymore, as the matter was too minor to address formally, and suggested that the best course of action would be to leave the village. Yamada, however, refused to leave. Regarding Langa, Gale allowed Yamada to train him. When asked about a training method, Yamada replied that he could adapt a technique he had used in an old MMO from his previous life. The only problem Yamada faced was the chief's son, who might target him, and as a result, Langa's family could be put in danger. Gale showed Yamada the way, but insisted that he had to follow the instructions without exception. Yamada assured Gale that he trusted him completely, even without reading the full plan, and Gale found that trust sufficient. He then asked Yamada to listen carefully and memorize all the details before explaining the entire plan to him. Later, Yamada approached the village chief while glancing at some photos nearby. The village chief arrived with Ujirone and explained that he had called Yamada for a task, emphasizing that anyone who did not contribute according to their ability did not deserve to live in the village. Yamada agreed silently, recognizing that the chief was not entirely wrong in principle, but he thought the standards were absurdly high and completely unfair. Later that night, Ujirone was talking to his father and mentioned that he planned to send them out to search for Solon, suspecting that they might have run off with half the money to hire adventurers. His father denied this, saying that Epsilon wasn't like that and that Yamada was only 14 years old, so they could not send him on such a mission. Ujirone insisted that his father's soft-heartedness was exactly why Yamada would be fine, as he was capable of hunting guinea fowl, and that people with abilities should undertake missions suited to their skills. His father wondered what would happen if Yamada refused, suggesting that in that case they could simply kick him out, which would be acceptable. Ujirone replied that if Yamada refused, they would claim that the Lank family should be penalized as punishment for Yamada taking advantage of the village. His father was shocked to hear this. The scene then returned to the present, where Yamada was questioned about whether he thought he could refuse the task. He was told that if he did, he would have to deliver 5 guinea fowl every month. When Yamada agreed to search for Solon, they were surprised. He explained that since he was indebted to the village, he would do whatever was required. They were shocked by his response, and Yamada realized that they were making unreasonable demands, just as Gale had predicted. Yamada wondered whether the next development would also turn out to be accurate. Ujirone set the condition that, since Yamada knew nothing unusual about the situation, he would have to take Zlatan with them. Yamada and Langa had already begun training, exchanging blows with each other, while Misha observed, thinking that although Langa was impressively fast, Yamada was still able to block his attacks with ease. She kept watching as the match unfolded, and when Yamada was about to defeat Langa, he suddenly reversed the situation, forcing Yamada to acknowledge his loss. Langa then turned to Misha, telling her it was her turn. Yamada asked for another round, but Langa won once more. Misha glared at Langa in an attempt to intimidate him. Langa apologized to Yamada, who reassured him that he was fine and even glad. He said he had been practicing diligently and suggested they take a break to hydrate before continuing. He recalled the past few days of training, when he and Langa had been working on presence detection and hunting. Langa had grown emotional about those sessions, as he had failed repeatedly until the very last day. In the end, he expressed his gratitude to Yamada. As they rematch, Yamada noticed that Misha was sitting in silence, reflecting that Yamada was truly strong, and if she could not keep up, she might never leave the village to become an adventurer. Yamada sensed danger, and in that moment, Langa seized the opportunity to capture and defeat Yamada once again. At Yamada's home, he was receiving a massage from Gale, who pointed out his weakness, explaining that it lay in his unarmed combat. Gale added that it might take Yamada nearly 18 years to fully master that aspect. He also mentioned that the village chief's family had been targeting Yamada, but if they worked together, none of it would be too troublesome. Still, that alone was not enough, and a plan was being considered to ensure that Langa's family would not face retaliation after Yamada's departure. First, however, they had to heal the wounds on Yamada's back. Yamada mentioned that during training, he had felt a strange reaction in his presence detection skill. Though it had not been strong, it had resembled a boss-class presence. Gale dismissed the concern, pointing out that there was no such powerful monster in the area. Yamada also thought it might have been just his imagination. After Gale finished treating his back, Yamada noticed the arrival of the goat family, and then headed out to Langa's house, where he joined them for a meal. Misha appeared lost in thought, so Langa asked if something was wrong and reminded her that if she wanted to become an adventurer, she needed to eat more. Hearing this, she resumed eating. At that time, Sasha thanked Yamada for all the meat and wild vegetables he had brought, but Yamada replied that he should be thanking them for providing the meal. The evening passed with all of them enjoying themselves like a family. Langa referred to Yamada as his disciple in martial arts, yet admitted that he himself had learned a great deal from Yamada. He had come to understand how valuable detection and transport skills were, and how useful they could be in combat. Grateful for all of it, he thanked Yamada sincerely. Yamada then noticed Sasha's sad expression. After some time, he spoke to her, explaining that Langa was not working hard merely to become an adventurer, but because he wished to protect the village and everyone in it. He told her she need not worry. She thanked him for his reassurance, and went on to reveal that the village chief hadn't been like that before, but had suddenly become different after gaining power. She urged him to be cautious. Meanwhile, Misha overheard the conversation from outside and felt deeply saddened. The scene then shifted to the monsters, who were terrified of a black cat that had rescued small monsters and animals. From there, the focus moved to Orca, who sensed a strange presence and realized things were becoming more complicated than he had expected. Still, Yamada had little to fear, as Orca was watching over him. Orca entered the dimensional space that Yamada had created and saw many unusual things there. Though he could not perceive everything clearly, he could still share much with Yamada about what was happening, fights, and other disturbances. Yamada, meanwhile, remained with the small animals, reflecting that the following day would mark the beginning of their departure. The scene shifted to Anna, who rushed to Hagen in great haste. She quickly delivered her report, explaining that the goddess client was extremely satisfied with how long Yamada had endured in the simulation zone. The goddess had even assigned one of her own subordinates to guide Yamada personally. Hagen understood that if Yamada truly had a local god watching over him, it was reassuring. However, they soon learned that the guide belonged to the slaughter of the vast ocean god, which left them uncertain about Yamada's safety. Still, a month and a half had passed without any complaints. Anna concluded that it was safe to assume Yamada had adapted well, avoided trouble, and encountered no people. Hagen, however, remained uneasy. He pointed out that bringing an incarnated soul into their world cost the creator god a small fortune. If the creator had isolated himself, that would be the real problem. The creator god never summoned mortals on a whim. It was always for a reason, such as the rise of a demon king, an impending apocalypse, or even to compensate for divine mistakes like taking someone's life too early. In such cases, the god would often send the soul into another world, granting them special abilities as compensation. Hagen then questioned why Yamada had been summoned at all, since the world seemed relatively stable. As they continued their discussion, they acknowledged that the request to summon Yamada had originally been made 300 years earlier, only reaching them after that long delay. Anna reflected, wondering why Yamada had truly been brought to their world. Langa too had no answers, believing the reasons might be far beyond their understanding. At the same moment, Orca sneezed at Yamada's mansion, as though someone had been talking about him. Orca denied the concern, reminding him that it was almost time for his task, to find the merchant Solon together with Zlatan and above all, to return safely. He explained that there was also a hidden objective. They first needed to avoid interference from the village chief and his son, who were likely to use Zlatan as a way to force Yamada out during the search. He revealed that the horned rabbits had been multiplying rapidly due to environmental changes caused by the village's expansion. Continuing, he warned of powerful monsters heading toward the village. Orca might have been the only one who noticed it, but he feared that once the villagers realized it, chaos would already have broken out. He also pointed out that since the merchant had not appeared, The salt shortage was worsening. Yamada added that the issue with the water source still needed to be solved. Orca admitted that he might be the only one who had noticed the full scope of these problems. Otherwise, someone else would eventually have to. Yamada reflected that he had plenty of objectives but not many cards left to play. The thought angered him, and he wondered what he was supposed to do. Orca then revealed that he had already written everything down for Yamada, explaining all the details in a set of papers he handed over. Yamada felt relieved and happy with the plan. Orca assured him that with it, everyone would be safe, and that the greedy fool of a village chief and his son would finally be removed from power. Yamada also realized from Orca's tone that taming those two men was something even Orca considered impossible. Orca agreed, and with that, Yamada prepared to set out. Just as he was about to leave, someone knocked on his door. The scene then shifted to Misha, who was practicing her swordsmanship. Not far away, she noticed a man striking a trunk with an axe, and on top of it she saw something that shocked her. It was as if a photograph of Yamada had been pinned to a board. Alarmed, she immediately rushed to Yamada's house to warn him. When she arrived, she discovered that her sister, Sasha, was already speaking with Yamada about something that left him visibly shocked. The sight made Misha feel guilty and uneasy. Soon after, Yamada departed together with Zlatan. Earlier, Sasha asked him to marry Misha and live in the village forever. He admitted that Misha was cute and hardworking, but he had never thought of her in that way. The two take a break to eat lunch. So far, they don't have a clue. There are no traces of tracks, broken parts, or anything. Zlatan drew Solon to show it to Yamada. Zlatan also painted the painting in the chief's house. Though he looks scary, Yamada thinks he is softy inside. As they continued their search, they ate together every day, talking, stretching, painting, carving wood, gazing at the scenery, marking the day on a canvas, and playing in the midst of the rain until they encountered goblins. Both of them grew tense as the goblins launched their attack, forcing them into battle. Yamada recalled Orca's plan, to deliberately let the monsters strike first. Two types of creatures had been drawn by the abnormal surge of smaller monsters, goblins and orcs. Yamada realized that guarding against the arrows without Zlatan noticing was an especially difficult challenge. He fought according to Gale's instructions, targeting enemies that tried to strike from hiding. While lying low, he managed to counter several attackers, striking them down. Zlatan, watching closely, noticed that Yamada seemed to flick stones with his fingers, and cleverly kept replenishing them directly from his item box so he would never run out. After a while, Zlatan inhaled deeply and released a powerful burst of energy against the monsters. Without hesitation, he lifted Yamada and carried him away from the battlefield. In their retreat, they left behind something valuable, bait for the goblins. Soon, the creatures swarmed around the abandoned giant axe of Zlatan, distracted long enough for Yamada and Zlatan to observe from a distance. Yamada remarked that leaving that piece of luggage behind had been a clever move, as it slowed the goblins' advance. After a short pause, Zlatan urged that they return to camp, explaining that they needed to lure the goblins there and launch a surprise attack to wipe them out completely. Yamada, however, appeared uneasy. He admitted he would prefer to handle that part himself, since he now had the freedom to move more easily. One of them needed to report to the village, and it was Zlata. Zlatan disagrees, pointing out that a surprise attack won't succeed with just one person. Besides, he didn't want any more victims like Solon. Yamada picked up a bottle and told Zlatan it was his trump card. Meanwhile, Sasha asked Misha if she would tell Yamada what they had discussed. Misha agreed, but Yamada did not take it seriously, which worried her. Sasha reassured her that it was fine, adding that even if there were a surprise attack, Yamada might struggle a little, but would never fall. They both sat down to talk about him, and Sasha suggested that Misha should marry Yamada. A heavy silence followed, and after a while, Misha became flustered, stood up, and tried to speak, but she could not bring herself to say anything. She felt embarrassed even imagining such a thing, and knew she would be unable to respond. Sasha, however, believed they would make a good couple, and that the marriage would benefit not only them, but also the village, which was why she supported the idea. Misha remained speechless, while Sasha thought about how their future might turn out, even if Yamada chose to travel the world later. She felt that living in the village for a few years would make everything else fall into place. At that moment, May appeared, wondering aloud whether Yamada had not yet returned. Yamada discovered wrecked wagons, and the people riding them had already been slain. Near it, he found a photograph of a family with 2 children and their parents. Yamada was deeply shaken by the sight and thought that he should slowly exhale to steady himself. Yamada sensed multiple presences ahead and used his bottle, throwing it into the goblin camp to ignite the fire. The goblins were shocked, but his real intention was to use the scent of guinea fowl blood to lure the foxes into attacking them. While Yamada watched the plan unfold, Zlatan sat in a cave, wondering if they had obtained everything they needed. He only hoped Yamada would not take things too personally. Using the door, Yamada returned to his room, where Orca was lying down. Seeing him worried, Orca told him to calm down, reminding him that there was rarely anything worth panicking over in that world. Yamada explained everything, which in turn made Orca concerned as well. Still, Yamada had confirmed that Merchant Solon was safe, and that while the horned rabbit had drawn many threats, the goblins had been completely wiped out. Orca suspected that the alcohol, herbs, and foul blood might have been too much, which was why the Silver Wolf Pack had remained unharmed. He also admitted that Zlatan seemed more capable than expected. Yamada thought they might at least reason with Zlatan, but Orca called him a naive one, explaining that what's truly terrifying isn't the fool who can't be reasoned with, but the smart enemy who understands your thoughts and position. Orca recalled that Zlatan possessed strong self-control and remarkable intelligence, so he knew he should not let his emotions take over. Though Yamada agreed, he admitted he did not want to fight Zlatan and wondered what to do. Orca responded that Zlatan's intelligence and loyalty to the village chief could actually be considered his weakness. At Langa's house, Misha was bathing while also washing Mei's body with soap. She noticed the toy Yamada had made and wondered whether she truly liked it. Mei agreed that she did. Misha then asked if Mei also wanted Yamada to remain in their village forever. After thinking about it, Mei said that Yamada was indeed very special, but she was sure there were others who cared about him as well, so it would not be fair for them to try to keep him only for themselves. Hearing this, Misha realized how much Mei had matured. She herself also wished to leave the village one day to become an adventurer, and she never stopped imagining what the future might hold. Suddenly Mei noticed something and said that there was a peeper. Lanka rushed to the window, wondering who might be there, but relaxed when he realized it was only small animals. Even though everyone else was enjoying themselves, Misha still worried about Yamada. Meanwhile, Yamada went to hand the axe to Zlatan, who had already prepared another one, and started cutting down nearby trees. Yamada recalled the previous night, when he had brought back the axe for Zlatan, who had been standing all alone. Yamada told him to stay calm, assuring him that all the goblins had already been wiped out, though he added that there was something important he needed to discuss. Before he could continue, Zlatan suddenly struck at Yamada with another weapon. Yamada immediately ran to save his life as Zlatan chased him, wielding 2 more axes and even hurling them at him. Yamada barely managed to dodge while fleeing, and in desperation, he threw small stones at Zlatan's legs. However, they had no effect on him at all. Yamada kept dodging the attacks, and in the middle of it all, he found himself comparing this struggle to the life he had lived in the past. Suddenly, Zlatan appeared right in front of him to strike again, but Yamada narrowly avoided the blow. Determined, he resolved not to give up and wouldn't abandon Zlatan. Their fight continued fiercely until Yamada was struck brutally on the elbow. The pain was sharp, but he refused to surrender, continuing to dodge and flee from Zlatan's relentless assault. He knew Zlatan would eventually catch up with him. At one point, when Zlatan turned his head after hearing some unusual sounds, Yamada seized the chance. He gripped the sword, channeling the full strength and desperation he had built up over the past 15 years, and hurled it. Yet, Zlatan managed to dodge, realizing that the weapon was Solon's sword. This made him question whether Yamada missed on purpose. After he recalled good memories with Solon, he shouted that he had lost, demanding that Yamada explain what was going on. The scene then shifted to Hagen, where a pig cried out in anger, questioning if Hagen was the one who assigned him to the new client acquisition department. After bringing in record profits, Hagen dumped him in this gutter-scraping job. Hagen reflected on the matter, reasoning that the true value of a client lay not in swindling one-time deals but in fostering enduring partnerships. Their business involved immortal gods, and so profits were meant to be mutual and long-term, building relationships that benefited both sides. The man, however, doubted the fairness of it all, though he accepted that cleaning up after clueless superiors was unofficially part of his work. As he left, he wondered about the reason Yamada had been sent into that world in the first place. Meanwhile, Anna rushed in, panicked, until a sudden call came from Yamada's client. The goddess herself was requesting direct communication and asked if she could be patched through. Chapters end at 10. Thank you for watching, guys. I hope you loved this manga. Have a good day.